Hey guys, it's Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Star Trek Picard. Last time on Picard, we had Nepenthe. What all happened last time?
Well, as it turns out, they managed to escape from the Borg cube, made their way to a strange little planet where, of all people, Commander Riker, or Captain Riker now, I guess, and Commander Troy were living with their rather wild child. And I guess Soji found out that she was not who she thought she was.
Yes, Soji found out she was an android, which was a little odd, and took her the episode to sort of, I guess, accept it, or just accept that this is happening, basically.
Come to terms with it, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then the main thing is that now we are going to try to find the home world of all the synthetic life forms.
Yes.
And it's a race, which the Romulans, they kind of have a head start anyway. So, and then at the end, Picard and Soji met back up with Rios and the gang, and they are off. So, that is pretty much that. We are down to the final 3 episodes of this season. So it'll be very interesting to see what's going to be happening. But if you want to watch our reaction to this episode of Star Trek Picard, like the previous 7 that have come before, it is not in this video. And I know I could probably stop saying the spiel at this point, but in case anyone just happened to be clicking on this episode, we'll go ahead and say it. So, if you want to watch our reaction to this episode of Star Trek Picard, you're going to have to head down in the description or to the pinned comment, and there'll be a link there that will take you to our normal reaction. And you can watch that, you can hopefully have a good time, and when you're done with that, all you have to do is come right back to this YouTube video, and we will talk about the episode. That is pretty much it. You got anything else?
I'm good.
Alright, then let's go ahead and get right into this episode of Star Trek Picard. Here we go. Alrighty. Now, I have to say, the whole thing of, 200,000 years ago, this whole big thing happened, and, it's like, with warp. Once you pass the warp threshold, someone comes, which was the whole thing. The Vulcans came to us, and it's like, well, if you have synthetic life that evolves, someone bad is coming. That is not something I would expect from Star Trek, like this big destroyer or something. It kind of sounds like Doctor Who, honestly, but seeing how Star Trek would deal with something like that is really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
It's a new kind of story for them. Because, I guess the only time where it's like, oh, this big, bad life form and stuff, I guess the only other time we had that was, like, Star Trek 5, and it didn't really do that well.
Yeah.
So,
going back to Next Generation.
Yeah.
Did the Romulans not know about Data? Or was Data not evolved enough to trigger the warning?
I think, first off, Data isn't as evolved as Soji is. But the thing is, the way they explained it, it seemed like, for 200,000 years, the Romulans, who apparently have been around for 200,000 years, they have been, they've been keeping an eye on everything. And it's not until Dr. Soong starts creating this, synthetic life 40 years ago that then they're like, okay, we need to watch this. And so it's like, okay, they're watching this. All right, we have Data. There's Lore. Lore dies a couple times. And then eventually Data dies in Star Trek Nemesis. But they still have their person within Starfleet, Commander O, in order to keep an eye on things. So I would assume if Data evolved too much or something else happened or they contacted the homeworld, then they would strike.
And at the end of Nemesis, who was the one that they kind of replaced Data with? Was that B4 or something like that?
Yeah, okay. B4.
So,
who they deactivated after the ban.
Okay. So basically then this whole premise is because Soong's first generation, Data, Lore, B4, whatever, didn't cross the threshold, they kept to themselves. But now Maddox has crossed the threshold, and now they have to act.
Kind of. Okay. It's that Maddox went off of Dr. Soong's work after Data and Lore and B4 and eventually found the synth homeworld. And once we realize, okay, so there's an entire world of these synths, that's when the Romulans start to take action. And so it was the events of Captain Vandermeer and shooting those two synths that led to the eventual attack on Mars to ban all synthetic life form. They kind of have to finagle it a bit because it's like, okay, this is a very interesting story, but you have to deal with the fact that the entirety of the Next Generation had Data in it.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, why didn't they do anything with Data? I guess it's that Data didn't cross the threshold.
Yeah.
But he probably came close. That's why they kept an eye on him.
Yeah, it just all seems somewhat convoluted because...
Yeah.
So, again, there's a synth homeworld.
Yes. Somewhere in the galaxy.
But Maddox...
I don't think Maddox created Soji or Dodge. I think they are from the home world.
Okay.
And they got separated. I think.
Okay. But how did they get to wherever Maddox was? Or where did Maddox find them? See, that's the part that I'm still...
I think it's that Maddox found the synth homeworld.
Ah, okay.
And then eventually came back.
Okay.
Now I'm curious as to where the synth homeworld is, because they're taking the Borg, transwarp pathways, that was how Voyager eventually, made it back to the Alpha Quadrant. So I'm not sure, where we're really going in the galaxy.
Back to the Delta Quadrant, apparently.
Either that or the Gamma or Beta Quadrant somewhere, which I guess we already were in the Beta Quadrant, I believe.
Yeah, it could be.
I think once you cross into Romulan space, I think that is the Beta Quadrant.
Yeah, I think we had that conversation in an earlier episode.
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
So
we still have 2 episodes?
Yes.
To wrap this all up. And
yes.
It seems now, again, some of these episodes have been slower than others. This one, again, as I said, was somewhat action-packed. Rather enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
But now it seems like we have to cram a huge amount of information into these last 2 hours, and I worry that the story will suffer for that.
Well, unless it is supposed to be that the story continues into the second season.
No.
Because they did confirm a second season, but this is a very contained story, so I don't know if we're going to wrap it up in the next 2 episodes or not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would make sense if there's a second season that we would have essentially not an Enterprise type crew, but now you've got this, ragtag group of Raffi and Rios, and I guess Dr. Girardi somehow will get out of this, maybe or maybe not, and Picard and Soji. So
Yeah.
So I don't know. It seems like a setup, but where it goes from here, I'm close.
Yeah, and it is when you really take a step back, it's like, okay, this is very convoluted. It's not bad. It's just like, all right, we're clearly having to retcon some things. There's been a Romulan mole this whole time. Good to know. Great to know Starfleet is that bad that a Romulan mole can get in.
But that being said, and again, you may have forgotten this, there was one whole season of Next Generation, if you recall, devoted to the fact that some aliens had basically been parasites and gotten into certain Starfleet, and right up to the last episode where Picard and they went back to Earth and basically killed the head guy who had made his way all the way up to the head of Starfleet.
Yeah.
By the way, bizarre footnote. Mm-hmm. The guy playing the head of Starfleet was a man named Robert Schenken, who was a guy that I went to college with, and not only is he an actor, he's if I recall correctly, a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright. He wrote a group of 9 plays called the Kentucky Cycle, based on his family's history. So, hello, Robert.
It's the only thing about this where it's like, okay, this seems like maybe we're going a step too far. Is this whole Great Destroyer with we pulled 8 stars together and put a planet in between? It's like, how did... Well, did they say, was it the Romulans that left the message, or was it the Romulans that found the message?
I don't know. I think the Romulans left the message.
I think. Now, that implies that the Romulans have been around for 200,000 years, and...
Well, we are a relatively young planet. We're still a yellow star.
Yeah.
But
they were also space-worthy for 200,000 years.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure about that. Now, it would have also been interesting if they had said, like, maybe they thought at first, like, okay, they pulled 8 stars together. It's like, okay, how do you do that? But then it's something like, well, they generated 8 stars. I feel like that's a bit more believable if it's some sort of, I guess, a synthetic star. But, yeah, that was the one where it's just like, all right, that's a little too much. Like, I can see this happening on Doctor Who, but Doctor Who doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't take itself seriously, but it's more it's more fantasy than Star Trek is.
Yeah, but again, remember, not all stars are huge,
Yeah.
There are stars that are smaller than our sun, so it is conceivable, if they've been around 200,000 years and have been space-worthy, that they could have developed technology to do that. But again, that's a minor point, and it's so far in the background that we really need to kind of focus on what's happening here.
That's true. We need to focus on Soji and the planet of the synthetics and the eventual destroyer. Which, okay, so this destroyer will come around when synthetic life forms have gotten too evolved. But Soji is the destroyer. That I don't quite understand.
Well, she thinks she is. It may be...
They all think she is. So that's the only thing where it's like, okay, why is the destroyer one of them? Would be my question, I guess.
I was thinking as this progressed that maybe the Romulan lady in the psych ward on the Borg cube may be the destroyer. So, because she and whatever the lady there, Narek's sister, both survived the understanding of what was happening. So I don't know. Again, we got still a lot of loose threads. We got a gigantic bowl of spaghetti, and we're just pulling out one strand at a time here. So
yeah, that's true. It will probably all hopefully be cleared up in the next 2 episodes. So I do also find it like slightly convenient that it's like, oh well, Rios was on that ship that made first contact with these synthetic life forms. Like, well, that's incredibly convenient considering the fact that we just happened to go to him. It's just that Rafi just happened to know him. Yeah. So, I don't know. We can kind of go into the notes. I actually wrote more notes than normal on this one. So I wrote down the second coming. So this is the first time in 200,000 years that this destroyer is coming back because synthetic life forms are too evolved. Which then begs the question, it's like, okay, they're too evolved. What are they, jerks or something? I don't...
Well, that's the question of 90% of science fiction is if we get to a machine that is more efficient than a human being, will the machine then make the obvious choice that inefficient human beings need to be eliminated so that the more efficient species can survive? I mean, that's Darwinism at its very basis.
I mean, and you could also say, like, well, maybe it's something like the humans were the ones that tried to go against the synths. It's like, oh, well, you're more evolved, so we'll go against you. And then it's like, okay, well, the synths have to take action, which is kind of like Skynet in the Terminator movies. Like, we tried to shut Skynet down, so then Skynet took over, and we had the whole war, and then six decent movies happened. So, yeah. Well, two good, 3 and then the rest. So, yeah.
I don't even remember Terminator Genesis.
Genesis was the one where they went back in time, but Sarah Connor was already good. She already had all the guns and stuff, and she already had Arnold and stuff. I liked Genesis. A lot of people didn't. And then I don't remember Terminator 3.
Wasn't that the one with the female Terminator?
Yes, the TX. And it was just John Connor. So, anywho.
Okay. But yeah, Skynet finds a way.
Yeah, so it could be that there's something that people went against the evolved synthetic life forms, and then when they completely annihilated, that's when this destroyer came in and then left the message with the 8 stars and the planet and everything. So
Okay.
And I guess if that message is in the Beta Quadrant, it makes sense that only the Romulans ever found it, because they are in the Beta Quadrant.
Yeah.
So because if the Federation and the Vulcans and the Klingons, if they're all in the Alpha Quadrant, they would probably never reach there. So at least that makes sense. And again, good use of Romulans finally. So let's see. I did write down Deep Space 12. Guess we're not going there anymore. That's unfortunate. Man, we were almost there. We were going to have Deep Space 12, which when he started saying Deep Space, I was like, 9, 12. Close enough.
But surely somebody from Deep Space 12, you're going to run into, Dr. Bashir or, Jadzia, or I guess Jadzia wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
Ezri or somebody. It's somebody to say we're, making that little callback to Deep Space Nine, but it didn't happen, so.
I mean, they could still show up. I hope, Picard texted the location to them before they went off, I don't know. But it's like, okay, we're going to Deep Space 12, and we had a talk with Admiral Clancy, and it's like, and she's finally agreeing and sending a squadron, and it's like, yeah, but we're still just going to stick with our ragtag group. It's like, all right, if you say so. I think this episode had the best use of all the holograms.
Yes.
All the different versions of Rios. I thought that was very funny, and I'm trying to, did we ever figure out what the 5th one was for? The last one they showed, who had the really long hair.
No,
yeah, I don't remember.
We had the emergency medical hologram,
the
hospitality hologram,
right?
The navigation hologram,
who was Irish, I think.
Engineering hologram.
He was Scottish. Yeah,
and then
the 5th one,
the Jason Momoa Aquaman.
Yeah,
look-alike.
Yeah. I mean, that has to be really fun for him to just go around through all 5 of them. But yeah, that was interesting that they're all different parts of him, basically. And Rafi was just trying to get something out of the 5 of them. So, and it's also interesting that it's like, they're all coded to be Rios, but they all have to have different accents. So, and I will say, this was probably the worst episode for us not to have subtitles on. I mean, first with that scene with Narek's sister at the beginning, we could barely understand her there, but then to have the 5 of them with their accents, like all right, I understand the British one, and I understand whatever the American one was trying to do. I at least can hear him, but
yes, Ireland and Scotland.
Those are pretty thick accents,
I don't know if I mentioned this before. It reminded me of a great musical from the late 50s called My Fair Lady, based on George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion, and it's about teaching people how to speak proper English. And in one of the songs, why can't the English learn how to speak something? Why can't something like that? Professor Higgins says there are places where English is painful to your ears, and in America they haven't used it in years. The Scots and the Irish bring you close to tears. I'm told that in America they haven't used it in years. So, it's very hard to listen to some of those accents.
Yeah.
And we've done that with Doctor Who. I've also mentioned that without subtitles, it would be very difficult to understand.
Yeah.
A real heavy Cockney accent, or the Liverpool or Northumberland, that area in the north, and then of course Welsh. No, not even going to go there.
See, that would be hilarious if you ever watched Torchwood, because it's set in Cardiff, and a decent amount of the cast just is Welsh. So, but I think they have to tone it down a bit. They're told specifically, all right, you got to tone it down somewhat. Yeah. And luckily in that show you have John Barrowman, who's just doing his American accent. So
I've played on stage a Scottish character once and an Irish character once, and the Irish character, I ended up I guess we did about 4 weeks of rehearsal and 2 or 3 weeks of performances. I remember waking up one night thinking that I had been dreaming in Irish. That I was still in the dream. I was speaking with an Irish accent. But I got to play Jamie Bothwell in Robert Bolt's Vivat Regina. He was the man who essentially saved Mary Queen of Scots from being assassinated by her own people, but ultimately she was then captured by Elizabeth. So anyway,
see, I wonder in the UK, like it's got to be tricky because you are really close together with all those different accents. Like at least in the United States, we are spread out a lot. And yeah, obviously you can go to New York and get their accents. You can go to Boston and get their accents. But it's like, the South is just the South. And even Southerners don't always have that accent. Obviously, the two of us don't have that, so...
Well, we think we don't, but... we don't have the heavy Oklahoma accent.
Yeah. I mean, I will say y'all, though, pretty much all day. In fact, on Discord, where a bunch of people on my Discord are British, I will just sneak in y'all as much as I can. just to be funny. So, let's see. We did get backstory on Rios, which was good with Vandermeer. I will say it's nice that this whole thing with Starfleet, it's like, they kind of set it up as like, was Starfleet in on the attack or something? It's like, what's going on, with Starfleet? Is there someone, at the top? It's like, I like that it's really just Commander O, and it's just Starfleet security. Like, it's not the whole of Starfleet that's, like, corrupted and everything.
By the way, one of the things there, too, the backstory with Rios, and again, I don't know that the average person would catch this, but the ship that he was on, the Ibn Majid, that's an Arabic term. All right? And so that, again, goes right back to Star Trek, the original series, basically saying that the Earth had completely come together and we really had kind of, become one planet, intraplanetary culture, so that we are able to name our starships not only after, the English and Christian-speaking world, but also, African and Western Asia and, Eastern Asia and that sort of thing. So that's really kind of cool.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, and I guess technically you were wrong about the cigar box because he didn't have cigars in there. He just had all his Starfleet stuff.
Yes, what I'm saying about that, though, is the cigar box from a 20th or 21st century probably would not have lasted 300 years.
Probably not.
I mean, theoretically going into space, yes, but that would have had to be a replica.
Yeah.
But how does a guy born in the 22nd or 23rd century know about cigar boxes?
I guess. Well, I mean,
unless sure, he could have found it in an antique store or something like that.
Yeah.
But how would he know that that's what people used to keep knickknacks and doodads and stuff like that? So, it was a great visual reference for us.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder, where did he pick up a cigar box?
Yeah.
Or where did he? Why did he replicate one?
Do they still have those this far into the future? That kind of reminds me of like the Orville, when it's like they will reference a lot of stuff from the 21st century, and it's like, but you're only doing that because it's a 21st century show.
Yeah.
Like how Captain Mercer just has a Kermit doll on his desk. It's like, Kermit the Frog at that point is hundreds of years old, and you still have that. Like, no one has a toy from 200 years ago now.
Yeah,
so
not that you would put on your desk like that.
Yeah. So, let's see.
I have, in our office, we have a musket that's from the 1830s. So it's almost 200 years old, but we certainly don't take it out and play with it. It's beyond antique, that's not something that you or your brother were ever allowed to play with. I show it to people occasionally, but other than that, it's not something that, again, like a cigar box, it's not, or a Kermit doll, it's not something you keep on a daily basis or actually use for some purpose.
Yeah. Let's see. Now, do you think Rios was the first officer of that ship?
That does seem to be what they were implying there, because he had to write the report on Vandermeer's death. Is it Vandermeer or Vandiver?
It's Vandermeer.
and then gets drummed out 6 months later.
And he was the one who covered it up, basically, because he was in there. He had to cover it up, and he deleted the transport logs when he beamed the bodies out. So, yeah, I guess that would make sense. So even if he did, succeed him to captain, it just didn't. It didn't work out because he was so haunted by that. So, now it's interesting that one of the synths that he met, Jana, looks exactly like Soji and by extension Daj. So when they go to this planet, this homeworld, is it only going to be two distinct looks for these synths? Like, instead of, like, I'm thinking, like, okay, it's just going to be, a bunch of people, but they're androids. But it seems like, are we going to go there and there's one look for men and there's one look for women?
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't quite understand that, because also, in one of the very first episodes, didn't Data paint a picture, a portrait, and the girl in the picture was Daj and Soji? So
yes.
How would Data have known that?
Yeah, how did Data know? Because it's only after Nemesis and everything that, and I guess after the synthetic ban, that I think that Maddox goes and finds the synth homeworld. So how does Data know about that? Which means, how did Dr. Sung know about that?
Hopefully, again, in the next 2 episodes, all of this will be answered.
It's honestly like we need an episode. It's like we need a flashback episode about Data learning this stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Which, I mean, you'd have to really bump up the de-aging CG for that. So,
although in the comments on one of these episodes, somebody said that Data was built so that although he wouldn't age as quickly as other people, that he would age.
Maybe.
I thought somebody made that comment. I don't remember that at all, because he didn't. I mean, of course, he didn't really age that much during the actual series.
Yeah,
he did a little bit in the movies because he was just getting older. You could tell he was somewhat heavier.
Yeah,
it wasn't until this, which is 15 years after the last movie, that he really does look considerably older.
Yeah, but, and I mean, I think someone actually tweeted a picture to me where it showed Brent Spiner in that first scene where it's, he's painting the picture and Picard comes out and sees him, and he is older because they did still have to use the de-aging CG on him. So, yeah, I don't know. Let's see. We kind of talked about most of this. The threshold for synthetic life form, we talked about that, and the synth homeworld, and Starfleet. Yeah, I guess that was pretty much that. We kind of just powered through all the notes.
Well, again, they're all somewhat interconnected.
They are.
Although there were like 3 or 4 different storylines in this episode, they all ultimately were connected, so that's why we've ended up discussing them all at the same time.
Yeah.
So just picking at the spaghetti strands here.
Yeah. And I guess since we're not going to Deep Space 12, it means that Dr. Girardi doesn't have to turn herself in, at least for a little while.
Yeah.
And I would kind of wonder, because she did this, she was instructed by a mole in Starfleet to do this. So I'm wondering, like, okay, well, if everyone is, ousted and O is, arrested and everything, I mean, I don't think they would be able to just pardon Dr. Girardi, because, I mean, she was still, well, I don't know, because, I mean, I guess the only thing they could get her on is murder, because she did kill Maddox, but...
Theoretically, though, she was under duress.
Yeah, that's true.
Not being blackmailed, but basically, she was basically told, if you don't do this, bad things will happen to you. So, I mean...
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and see what happens to her.
mean, yeah, you could say that, but you could also argue, well, but she was also supposed to kill Soji, and she just didn't. She just decided not to. Which it is nice, after that whole thing, the whole speech she had where she was like, I think about suicide every day. It's the only thing that comforts me after all this. And it's like, but she did get that nice talk with Soji, because that was her thing from the beginning, was that she wanted to actually see synthetic life. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe they can give her a stern warning, or just a few years or something. They reduce a sentence. I don't know. But I do like that it's not all of Starfleet, that it's like, oh, everything's falling apart with Starfleet, even though, yes, they're not exactly innocent with everything with the synthetic ban and what happened with Romulus. So I will say, though, that we've kind of just sort of strayed away from what happened with, like, oh, Romulus exploded. It's like, well, yeah, but now we're talking about all this other stuff with the Romulans. So that's also interesting. But yeah, that is pretty much all I got. You got anything else?
No, that's quite a lot.
All right, yeah, that was a lot. This is probably longer than our normal discussions, but that's all right. That's all right. I feel like we talked more in that reaction too.
Hello,
which is good. I will say, like last episode, as I was going through and editing, I'm like, I'm cutting out so much of this episode, but we're not saying a thing. So, but that happens sometimes on these shows, that when it's the two of us, like I've noticed when I'm doing my solo reactions, I will just say stuff, and it eventually fills out to 10, sometimes more than 10 minutes. I have to cut it down. Yeah. We say just about enough, so it all sort of equals out. Yeah. Anyway, we have 2 more episodes.
Yay!
Which I believe are a specific 2-part finale. So, yeah.
Are we going to watch them together, or still do it separately?
We'll probably still do it separately. Okay. Yeah, I think that would work out best. So, we'll keep it on the weekly basis.
We have plenty of time.
You have plenty of time.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
This is now, 4 weeks?
4 weeks into quarantine?
Into quarantine, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, hey, going week by week, they're not going anywhere, so...
That's true.
Yeah. So we will take advantage of the fact that you're not going anywhere, and we will spread this out. So, yeah. We're done. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of our Star Trek Picard reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.